It isn't a misunderstanding. It's an amputation. For decades, the Great Lakes weren't a border, they were a bridge. Freshwater highways connecting two economies so tightly woven that nobody could tell where one ended and the other began. That bridge is burning. Donald Trump thought he could squeeze Canada on critical minerals. He thought he could snap his fingers and Ottawa would hand over the keys to the lithium, the cobalt, the nickel, the rare earths that power every electric vehicle battery, every fighter jet, every smartphone on the planet. He thought Canada would fold like a napkin. He miscalculated. Mark Carney didn't negotiate. He didn't send an envoy. He didn't write a letter. He signed an executive order restricting the export of 17 critical minerals to the United States, effective immediately. And the shockwave from that single signature is still reverberating through every trading floor, every Pentagon briefing room, and probably through the price of whatever device you're watching this on right now. Trump is spiraling. The National Security Council is in emergency session, and every cable news anchor is talking about the wrong thing. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what Carney just did, why Trump walked into a trap of his own making, and why the economic architecture you've relied on your entire life just cracked down the middle. So let's slow it down. Here is exactly what happened in the last 72 hours. It started, as it always does, with an act of greed. The White House, under pressure from the Department of Defense and a coalition of American tech lobbyists, drafted a presidential memorandum demanding that Canada reclassify its critical mineral reserves as joint continental security assets. In plain English, Trump wanted the United States to have veto power over who Canada sells its own rocks to. Not shared access, not preferred pricing. Veto power. The memorandum leaked on a Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, it was on the front page of the Globe and Mail. Ottawa didn't even wait for the official delivery. Mark Carney held a press conference before lunch. He stood behind a podium with a single sheet of paper. He didn't read from a teleprompter. He didn't use notes. He looked directly into the camera and said, "Canadian resources belong to Canadians. Full stop. This is not a conversation." He didn't soften it. He didn't qualify it. He didn't say, "We look forward to continued dialogue." He drew a line in the bedrock, and then he detonated the bomb. He announced the Critical Minerals Sovereignty Act. Effective immediately, all exports of unprocessed lithium, cobalt, nickel, graphite, and 14 other strategic minerals to any nation attempting to exert extraterritorial control over Canadian resources would be subject to government review and potential suspension. He didn't name the United States. He didn't have to. Everyone on Earth knew who he was talking about. The reaction was instantaneous. Trump went nuclear on Truth Social. 16 posts in 2 hours. He called Carney a traitor to the continent. He called Canada a freeloader. He threatened to pull every American soldier out of NORAD. He threatened to impose a 50% tariff on all Canadian goods. He even floated the idea of sanctions on Canada, America's closest ally. But while Trump was raging, something extraordinary happened in the markets. Tesla stock dropped 9% in 40 minutes. Rivian fell 12%. Every single American EV manufacturer went red. Why? Because you cannot build an electric vehicle battery without nickel. You cannot build a motor without rare earth magnets. And Canada controls the largest untapped reserves of these minerals in the Western Hemisphere.
The current version, called Synoshe Pro, is unlike anything you've ever seen. It doesn't rely on hours of scrubbing or harsh chemicals.
Trump just threatened the country that holds the keys to America's entire green energy transition. And that country just changed the locks. You need to understand the scale of what's happening here. This isn't about tariffs on lumber. This isn't about dairy quotas. This is about the raw materials that will define the 21st century economy. Let me show you the receipts, because the numbers don't lie. And right now, the numbers are screaming. Receipt number 1, the battery supply chain meltdown. The United States currently imports over 60% of its processed nickel from Canadian operations. The gigafactories in Nevada, in Texas, in Georgia, they were all built on the assumption that Canadian nickel would flow south without interruption. That assumption just died. Within hours of Carney's announcement, procurement officers at 3 major battery manufacturers were on the phone with their Canadian suppliers, begging for reassurance. They didn't get it. The Canadian mining companies issued a joint statement saying they would comply fully with the new Sovereignty Act. They have no choice. It's the law now. If those minerals stop flowing, the American EV industry doesn't slow down. It stops. You can't substitute your way out of this. You can't mine nickel in Kentucky. It doesn't exist there. The geology doesn't care about politics. Receipt number 2, the Pentagon problem. This is the one that should terrify every American. It's not just cars, it's fighter jets, it's missile guidance systems, it's submarines. The Department of Defense relies on Canadian-sourced critical minerals for dozens of weapons programs. The F-35 Lightning alone uses rare earth elements in its radar systems, its engine components, its stealth coatings. Canada is a primary source for many of these inputs. When Carney signed that act, he didn't just threaten Detroit. He threatened Raytheon. He threatened the entire American defense industrial base. Reports are now emerging that the Joint Chiefs requested an emergency briefing within 3 hours of the announcement. Not about Russia, not about China, about Canada. Let that sink in. The Pentagon is holding emergency meetings about its northern neighbor. That has never happened, not once in the history of the alliance. Receipt number 3, the China card. Now, this is the part that makes Trump's blood boil, because while the White House was drafting angry tweets, Mark Carney was making phone calls, not to Washington, to Beijing, to Seoul, to Berlin. Sources inside the Prime Minister's office say Carney has been quietly building an alternative buyer network for months. He saw this coming. He prepared. Canada has already signed a memorandum of understanding with South Korea's Battery Consortium for long-term mineral supply agreements. There are advanced talks with the European Union's Critical Raw Materials Club. And here's the part that keeps the Pentagon up at night. There is an open channel with China. Carney hasn't signed anything with Beijing. He's too smart for that. But he's made sure that Washington knows the channel exists. He is holding a loaded gun, and he's letting Trump see it. He is saying, you can buy our minerals as a partner, or you can watch us sell them to your rival, to your choice. This is leverage of the highest order, and it's leverage Trump cannot counter, because you can't sanction geology. You can't tariff a mountain. The minerals are in the ground in Canada, and there is nothing the White House can do to move them south by force. So why is Trump losing this fight? Because he fundamentally misunderstands what Canada is. He sees a country with 1/10 of America's population and assumes that means 1/10 of America's power. He is wrong. Our in the 21st century isn't about aircraft carriers. It isn't about GDP rankings. It's about what's in your ground and who needs it. And right now, everybody needs what Canada has. Trump's entire approach to Canada has been based on a 20th century assumption that America is the customer and the customer is always right. But Carney has flipped the script. He has reminded the world that Canada isn't just a customer service desk for American industry. It's the warehouse, and the warehouse just locked its doors. Look at what's happening inside the Republican Party right now. The senators from Michigan, from Ohio, from Pennsylvania, they are not backing the president. They are panicking. Senator after senator has released carefully worded statements about the importance of the bilateral relationship. Translation, stop this before our factories close. The governor of Michigan held a press conference yesterday practically begging for de-escalation. Her state's entire automotive ecosystem depends on cross-border mineral and parts flow. She knows that if this goes on for 60 days, plant closures begin. If it goes on for 6 months, some of those plants never reopen. Trump is destroying his own base to win a fight he picked for no reason. He is burning the furniture to heat a house he's about to lose. The auto workers, the factory hands, the miners in Minnesota who process Canadian ore. These are his voters. And they are about to pay the price for his ego. Now let's talk about Carney's strategy because it is surgical. He is not trying to hurt the American people. He is trying to hurt Donald Trump. There's a difference, and Carney understands that difference better than anyone in global politics right now. Every single retaliatory measure Canada has announced is targeted at maximum political damage with minimum civilian harm. The mineral
This season, you've got places to go, people to see, and things to do. You may have already gotten vaccinated for flu and
mineral restrictions hit the industries that fund Republican campaigns. The energy review process threatens refinery output in red states. The threatened redirection of exports to Asia undermines Trump's entire narrative about winning against China. Carney isn't swinging a sledgehammer. He's performing surgery. He knows exactly which nerves to cut, and he has a scalpel that Trump doesn't have. Credibility. When Mark Carney speaks, the bond market listens. When he issues a forecast, central bankers around the world take notes. He spent a decade as the most respected financial technocrat on the planet. He governed monetary policy for 2 G7 nations. He navigated the 2008 financial crisis from the top of the Bank of Canada. He steered the Bank of England through Brexit without a currency collapse. His resume isn't just impressive. In this fight, it's a weapon. Every time Trump calls him a globalist puppet, the financial world laughs. They know Carney. They've worked with Carney, and they trust Carney. Meanwhile, Trump's economic credibility is in free fall. The dollar weakened yesterday against every major currency, not because of inflation data, not because of jobs numbers, because the markets looked at this fight and decided that the President of the United States is the less stable actor. Think about that. The most powerful economy in the history of civilization, and the markets are betting against its leader in a dispute with Canada. That is an extraordinary indictment. Now, let me show you the part that nobody is talking about, the Arctic dimension, because this fight isn't just about minerals today. It's about territory tomorrow. Canada controls the Northwest Passage. As the Arctic ice melts, that passage is becoming the most valuable shipping lane on Earth. It cuts weeks off the journey between Europe and Asia. It's worth trillions in trade over the next 50 years. And Trump wants it. He has said so publicly. He has called the Northwest Passage an international waterway. Canada says it's sovereign Canadian territory. This mineral dispute isn't happening in isolation. It's happening against the backdrop of a much larger contest for control of the Arctic. And Carney knows that if he gives an inch on minerals, Trump will take a mile on the Arctic. That's why he can't fold. This isn't about nickel prices. It's about whether Canada exists as a sovereign nation or becomes an American resource colony. Carney is fighting for something bigger than trade policy. He's fighting for the idea that middle powers have rights. That geography isn't destiny. That being next to a superpower doesn't make you a vassal state. And the world is watching. My God, is the world watching. The European Union released a statement yesterday that was remarkable in its clarity. They didn't call for calm. They didn't urge both sides to negotiate. They said, and I quote, "The European Union supports the sovereign right of nations to control their natural resources." That is Brussels telling Washington to back off. That has never happened over a U.S.-Canada dispute. Japan's trade minister made similar comments this morning. Australia itself, a critical minerals powerhouse, issued a statement of solidarity with Ottawa. A coalition is forming, not against America, but against American overreach. And Carney is at the center of it. He's building a network that will outlast this crisis. He's building a structure that will constrain American economic aggression for a generation. This is what happens when you push a smart opponent too far. They don't just fight back, they build a system that makes sure you can never push them again. So where does this end? Honestly, I don't know, and anyone who tells you they do is lying. But I can lay out what comes next. There are 3 doors. Door 1, the standoff. Trump imposes broad tariffs. Canada maintains the mineral restrictions. Both economies bleed. The auto sector contracts, battery production stalls. Gas prices climb after 4 to 6 months of mutual pain. Exhaustion forces a deal. Both sides claim victory. The underlying relationship is permanently scarred, but functional. Door 2, the rupture. Trump escalates beyond tariffs. He invokes the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. He tries to freeze Canadian assets. He pulls out of NORAD. Canada responds by signing long-term mineral supply contracts with China and the EU. The continental defense architecture collapses. NATO is destabilized. Russia and China celebrate. This is the scenario that former defense secretaries are privately calling catastrophic. It sounds insane. 6 months ago, it was insane. Today, it's on the table. Door 3, the realignment. Carney succeeds in diversifying Canada's trade relationships so thoroughly that the U.S. loses its monopoly position. Canada becomes a true swing supplier, selling to the highest bidder on the global market. The U.S. is forced to compete for access to resources it used to get by default. American industry adapts, but at enormous cost. The special relationship doesn't die in a dramatic explosion. It fades into a transactional arrangement between 2 countries that used to be family and are now just neighbors. I think we're heading for door 1 with the gravitational pull of door 3 slowly bending the trajectory. The old relationship is already dead. What we're negotiating now are the terms of the divorce. Here's the bottom line. If you're watching this in America, your EV is about to get more expensive. Your electricity bill in the Midwest is going up. Your 401k is exposed to a supply chain crisis that your president created on purpose. If you're watching this in Canada, your economy is about to go through a painful but potentially transformative restructuring. Short-term pain, long-term independence. If you're watching this anywhere else in the world, take notes. because what's happening between Washington and Ottawa is a preview of what happens when the old order cracks. When the biggest economy on Earth decides that allies are enemies and friends are targets, everyone has to pick a side. Carney just proved something that will echo through every capital on Earth. You can say no to America. It will cost you. It will hurt. But you can do it. And if your leader is smart enough, disciplined enough, and cold-blooded enough, you might even win. The question now isn't who's right. The question is who blinks. Trump is pacing the Oval Office, furious, cornered by his own rhetoric, watching his leverage evaporate in real time. Carney is in Ottawa, calm, calculated, with a phone in one hand and a mineral map in the other, rewriting the rules of continental power. One of them is playing for today's headline. The other is playing for the next 30 years. You tell me who wins that game. Drop your take in the comments. I want to know, is Carney saving Canada or is he gambling with everything? Is Trump defending American interests or is he destroying them? The markets open in 12 hours. What happens next will move billions. Make sure you're subscribed because this story is accelerating and the next chapter might be the one that changes everything. History doesn't wait. Don't blink.
You won't believe it, but I literally